If you're drawn to real stories of marriage, betrayal, and women finding their strength, you've found your tribe. Please like this video and subscribe to stay connected. I stood in the grand ballroom of Hartwell Manor, staring at 50 white roses arranged in crystal vases, and wondered how long a person could live with a lie before it consumed them entirely. 50 years of marriage. Tomorrow night, this room would overflow with congratulations, champagne toasts, and well wishes for Michael and me. My mother Dorothy would beam with pride at her eldest daughter's golden anniversary. My children would give heartfelt speeches about lasting love, and I would smile through it all, knowing the truth. "Claire, darling, you look exhausted." Janet appeared at my elbow, her voice soft with concern. "You've been working yourself to death over this party." If she only knew how appropriate that metaphor was. "I'm fine," I lied, adjusting a ribbon that didn't need adjusting. "Just want everything perfect." Perfect. The word tasted bitter on my tongue. I'd spent 5 decades pursuing perfection. The perfect wife, the perfect home, the perfect family. And for what? So my husband could spend 20 years tangled up with my own sister. The discovery had shattered me 3 weeks ago. I'd been searching Michael's study for our old wedding photos when I found it, tucked inside a leather-bound copy of Hemingway that I knew he'd never read. A Polaroid, edges yellowed with age, dated July 2004. Michael and Rebecca on a beach, her head resting on his shoulder, his lips pressed to her temple, both of them sun-kissed and smiling with an intimacy that made my stomach turn. 20 years ago. Not last month, not last year. 2 decades of betrayal, hidden in plain sight while I cooked Sunday dinners, nursed him through his stroke, and played the devoted wife. "You're sure about inviting Rebecca?" Janet asked carefully. "I know you two haven't been close lately." Close. What a delicate way to describe estrangement. Rebecca and I hadn't spoken properly in years, and now I understood why. Guilt has a way of creating distance. "Families should be together for occasions like this," I said, meeting Janet's eyes. "Especially for Mother's 90th birthday celebration. Rebecca wouldn't miss it." What I didn't say, I needed her here. Needed to watch them together. Needed confirmation that the woman in that photograph was truly the sister I'd loved my entire life. Tomorrow night would reveal everything. "Champagne or ivory tablecloths?" the coordinator called out. "Champagne," I decided. "Let's make it unforgettable." The phone felt heavy in my hand as I dialed Rebecca's number. Each ring echoed in my chest like a countdown to detonation. "Claire?" Her voice came through warm and surprised. "This is unexpected." Unexpected. As if we were strangers instead of sisters who'd once shared everything. Dolls, secrets, apparently my husband. "I'm calling about the anniversary party," I said, keeping my tone light. "Mother would be heartbroken if you weren't there. It's her 90th birthday too, remember?" Silence stretched between us. I imagined her in that downtown loft Michael's construction company had renovated 2 years ago. Had he given her a discount? Or had that been payment for services rendered? "Claire, I don't know if that's a good idea. We haven't exactly—" "Please, Rebecca." I let a tremor enter my voice, playing the part of the lonely older sister. "We're not getting younger. Life's too short for whatever this distance is between us." Another pause. When she spoke again, her voice had softened. "You're right. Of course I'll come. For you and Mother. For me." The audacity almost made me laugh. "Wonderful. Saturday at 7. Dress formal. You know how Michael loves elegance." After hanging up, I sat in Michael's study, surrounded by his leather-bound books and mahogany furniture. This room smelled of his cologne and cigars, scents that once meant comfort. Now they triggered nausea. I opened his desk drawer methodically. Bank statements, business cards, a gold lighter I'd given him for our 40th anniversary. Then, wedged beneath his calendar, I found it, a hotel receipt from the Greenbrier, dated 6 months ago. Room 347, 2 nights, premium suite. I'd been visiting Sarah in Boston that weekend, helping with my grandson's nursery. Michael said he had a contractors conference in Atlanta. The Greenbrier was in West Virginia, nowhere near Atlanta. My hands didn't shake as I photographed the receipt with my phone. This wasn't my first find, and it wouldn't be my last. Each piece of evidence became a weapon in my growing arsenal. I pulled out the seating chart for Saturday's dinner, studying the careful arrangement I'd spent weeks perfecting. Michael at the head table, naturally, me beside him, our children surrounding us. And Rebecca? I took my pen and moved her name card to the furthest table from Michael, right next to Aunt Helen, who talked endlessly about her cats and never let anyone get a word in. Let her suffer through dinner watching him from across the room, unable to exchange their secret glances. Saturday couldn't come soon enough. I found myself in the garden pavilion that evening, watching the sun bleed orange across the Savannah sky. This had always been my sanctuary, the place where I came to think, to breathe, to exist outside the performance of being Mrs. Michael Hartwell. How many sunsets had I watched from this exact spot, mistaking silence for peace? 20 years. The number haunted me like a ghost I couldn't exorcise. While I was raising our children, volunteering at the church, hosting dinner parties that everyone praised, Michael and Rebecca were writing their own story behind my back. I thought about 2004, the year that Polaroid was taken. Emily had just started college. Thomas was engaged to Linda. Sarah was pregnant with our first grandchild. I remember feeling grateful that year, blessed even. Our family was expanding, thriving, and my husband was sleeping with my sister. The cruelest part wasn't the betrayal itself, it was realizing how carefully they'd hidden it. Every family dinner where Rebecca sat across from us, laughing at Michael's jokes. Every Christmas morning where she brought thoughtful gifts and kissed my cheek. Every phone call where she asked about my day, my health, my life, all while sharing the most intimate parts of herself with my husband. I'd mistaken her distance these past few years for busy schedules and growing apart. Now I understood it was guilt, finally catching up to her after 2 decades. My phone buzzed, a text from Michael. Working late tonight. Don't wait up. Working late. The phrase he'd used hundreds of times over the years. How many of those nights had been real? How many had been spent in hotel rooms with Rebecca, creating memories that should have been mine? 3 years ago, Michael had a stroke. Not severe, but frightening enough that we'd both confronted his mortality. I'd held his hand through physical therapy, adjusted his medications, researched diets to prevent recurrence. I'd slept in a chair beside his hospital bed for 5 nights, terrified of losing him. Had Rebecca visited? I tried to remember. Yes, she'd come once, bringing flowers. She'd stayed 20 minutes, claiming work obligations. Now I wondered if she'd been afraid he might confess in his weakened state, afraid the morphine might loosen his tongue and destroy the fiction we'd all been living. I'd nursed him back to health, devoted and loving. What a fool I'd been. But not anymore. Saturday was coming, and with it, the reckoning they both deserved. Michael's phone sat on the bathroom counter, vibrating with an incoming text. He was in the shower, singing off-key to some Eagles song, oblivious to my presence in the doorway. Steam clouded the glass, obscuring his silhouette, a metaphor for our entire marriage, I thought bitterly. The phone buzzed again. I'd never been the type of wife to snoop. Privacy was sacred. Trust was fundamental. But trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. I picked up the phone. No passcode. He'd removed it after the stroke, claiming his memory wasn't what it used to be. How convenient for me now. 2 messages from a contact saved simply as R. My heart hammered as I opened them. Tomorrow night is going to be difficult. Seeing you across the room and not being able to touch you. The second message arrived as I stared at the first. I'll wear the blue dress you love, the one from Charleston. Maybe that will help you remember why we've risked everything. The blue dress. I knew exactly which one she meant. Rebecca had worn it to Thomas's wedding 3 years ago. Michael had complimented her effusively, saying she looked stunning. I'd thought he was just being kind to my sister. He'd been remembering her in it, perhaps removing it. The shower shut off. I quickly photographed both messages, sent them to myself, deleted the evidence of my text, and placed the phone back exactly where I'd found it. Claire? That you out there? Michael's voice called through the steam. Just getting ready for bed, I answered, my voice remarkably steady. He emerged wrapped in a towel, water droplets clinging to his gray chest hair. 70 years old, and he still carried himself with confidence. Once upon a time, that confidence had made me feel safe. Now it just made me angry. Big day tomorrow, he said, smiling at me in the mirror. 50 years. Never thought we'd make it this far, did you? The audacity of the question nearly broke my composure. No, I said honestly. I really didn't. He kissed my forehead, a gesture he'd done 10,000 times before. It felt like a stranger's touch. Love you, Claire Bear, he whispered, using the nickname he'd given me on our honeymoon. I wondered if he called Rebecca by a special name too. Love you too, I lied, watching him in the mirror. Tomorrow Rebecca would wear her blue dress, and I would destroy them both. You're absolutely certain about this? Janet's hands trembled as she held my phone, scrolling through the screenshots I'd shown her. We sat in her sunroom Wednesday afternoon, surrounded by the orchids her late husband had planted. Janet understood betrayal in ways most people didn't. Her husband's cancer diagnosis had revealed a secret second family in Atlanta. She'd learned about 2 other children at his funeral. "Look at the dates," I said quietly, pointing to the messages. "And this." I handed her the Polaroid from 2004, watched her face cycle through disbelief, recognition, and finally rage. "That bastard," she whispered. "And Rebecca? Your own sister?" 20 years, Janet. Maybe longer. My voice cracked despite my determination to stay composed. While I was caring for our children, hosting their family dinners, nursing him through his stroke, they were... I couldn't finish. Saying it aloud made it more real. Janet set down the phone and gripped my hands. "What are you going to do?" "I've already done it." I pulled out a folder from my purse. "I met with Richard Pemberton yesterday. He's been our family attorney for 30 years. But Michael doesn't know about this particular appointment." She opened the folder. Her eyes widened as she read. "You're removing him from the estate entirely? Him and Rebecca both." The words tasted like victory and poison simultaneously. The house, the investments, the vacation property in Hilton Head. Everything goes to Sarah, Thomas, and Emily. Michael gets nothing. Rebecca gets nothing. Can you do that? Legally? Georgia allows it. The prenup Michael insisted on in 1974 actually works in my favor now. Hartwell Manor was my inheritance from my grandfather. The bulk of our wealth came from investments I made with that inheritance. Richard assured me it's airtight. Janet leaned back, processing. "And Saturday? You're really going through with exposing them publicly?" "At dinner, in front of everyone." I felt something dark and satisfying curl in my chest. Mother's 90th birthday, our 50th anniversary, surrounded by everyone who loves us. I want them to see the truth about the people they've been celebrating. "Claire, this will destroy your family." "They already destroyed it, Janet. 20 years ago." I took back the folder, my resolve hardening. "I'm just making sure everyone else knows it." She studied me for a long moment. "You've changed. Since you found out." "No," I corrected. "I've finally woken up." Outside, the afternoon sun cast long shadows across her garden. Saturday was 2 days away. Saturday morning arrived with deceptive beauty. Clear skies, birdsong, the scent of jasmine drifting through open windows. The kind of morning that promised joy. I woke at dawn. Michael still sleeping beside me, his breathing deep and rhythmic. How many mornings had I watched him sleep, feeling grateful? Now I just felt numb. By 7, I was dressed in linen pants and a silk blouse, moving through the house with purpose. The caterers would arrive at noon, guests at 7. I had 12 hours to prepare for the reckoning. "Going somewhere?" Michael appeared in the kitchen doorway, coffee mug in hand. "Just checking the garden pavilion," I said lightly, "making sure everything's ready. Want company?" "No." The word came out sharper than intended. I softened my tone. "You should rest. Tonight will be exhausting." He smiled, oblivious. 50 years deserves to be exhausting. I left before I said something irreversible. The garden pavilion stood at the far edge of our property, surrounded by magnolia trees and azaleas my grandmother had planted 60 years ago. Michael and I had restored it 5 years ago. New floors, fresh paint, modern lighting. He'd called it our legacy project. Now I wondered how many times he'd brought Rebecca here. The door opened with an old brass key I kept on my personal keychain. Inside, everything looked pristine. White wicker furniture, watercolor paintings of the Georgia coast, shelves lined with books nobody read. But I wasn't here for decoration. I crossed to the built-in bookshelf and pressed the edge of the third shelf from the bottom. The false panel clicked open, a hidden compartment my grandfather had installed for his rare bourbon collection. Instead of bottles, I found a wooden cigar box wrapped in a blue silk scarf, Rebecca's scarf, the one she'd claimed to have lost last Christmas. My hand steadied as I opened the box. Inside lay a stack of letters, maybe 30 or 40, bound with a faded ribbon. The paper smelled faintly of her perfume, Chanel No. 5, the same fragrance she'd worn since college. I pulled out the top letter, Rebecca's handwriting, distinctive with its looping flourishes. "My dearest Michael, last night reminded me why I've never regretted choosing you, even when it means hiding in shadows. Your hands on my skin, your whispers in the darkness. These stolen moments are worth every lie we tell." My vision blurred. 20 years of letters, 20 years of documented betrayal. I'd found my weapon, and tonight I would use it. I sat on the pavilion floor, surrounded by evidence of my ruined marriage, reading letter after letter, until the words blurred together into one endless confession. Michael, remembering Tuesday night at the Greenbrier makes work impossible. The way you traced my spine, whispering you wished we could stay forever. I saw Claire at Mother's house today. She hugged me, called me her baby sister. The guilt nearly killed me. Then I remembered your mouth on mine, and somehow it didn't matter anymore. 20 years, and I still get butterflies when your number appears on my phone. How is that possible? How can wrong feel so completely right? Each letter was a knife, cutting deeper than the last. Rebecca wrote about hotel rooms in Charleston, weekend getaways she'd called work conferences, even intimate details about their encounters in this very pavilion while I was grocery shopping or visiting the grandchildren. One letter stopped me cold. I'm wearing it right now as I write this. Claire's grandmother's necklace, the one with the sapphire pendant. You're right. It does look better on me. She never appreciated beautiful things the way we do. She's so focused on being the perfect wife that she forgot how to be interesting. I almost pity her. The necklace. My grandmother's Art Deco sapphire necklace. The one she'd specifically left to me in her will. It had disappeared 3 years ago, right after Grandma's funeral. I'd searched everywhere. Assumed I'd misplaced it in my grief. Rebecca had stolen it, worn it for Michael, pitied me. Something inside me cracked open. Not sadness anymore, but pure crystallized rage. I gathered every letter, carried them outside to the stone fire pit near the pavilion. One by one, I fed them to the flames, watched Rebecca's elegant handwriting curl and blacken, her words turning to ash and smoke. Your hands on my skin, burn. I've never regretted choosing you, burn. She forgot how to be interesting. Burn. The fire consumed 20 years of lies, and I felt something like liberation, but I kept one letter, the one about the necklace. I folded it carefully and slipped it into my jacket pocket, my smoking gun for tonight. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah. Mom, what time should we arrive? Dad says 7, but the invitation said 6:30. I checked my watch. Already noon. Time had evaporated while I'd been reading through my sister's love letters to my husband. 6:30 for family. I texted back. I need my children there early. They deserved to hear the truth from me first, before I detonated it in front of 200 guests. Walking back to the house, I passed Michael's roses, the white ones he'd insisted on for every anniversary. I'd always thought they symbolized purity. Now I understood they were just another lie, pretty and fragile, hiding thorns underneath. Tonight, those thorns would draw blood. I was ready. By 6 o'clock, Hartwell Manor had transformed into something from a magazine spread. Candlelight flickered across tables draped in champagne silk. The string quartet tuned their instruments in the corner. Crystal glasses caught the light like frozen tears. I stood before my bedroom mirror, fastening pearl earrings, a gift from Michael on our 25th anniversary. How many of his gifts had been guilt offerings? You look beautiful, Claire. Michael appeared behind me in his tuxedo, still handsome despite the gray hair and lines time had carved into his face. Like the day I married you. I met his eyes in the mirror. Do you remember that day? Every second. You wore your mother's veil, cried during your vows. He smiled. I promised to love you forever. Forever. The word hung between us like poisoned air. Yes, I said quietly. You did promise that. Downstairs I heard voices. Our children arriving early as requested. Sarah's laugh, Thomas's deep voice, Emily directing her husband about where to put gifts. I should go greet them, Michael said, kissing my cheek. Take your time. After he left, I opened my jewelry box and stared at the empty velvet space where Grandma's necklace should have been. Tonight, I would see it again, around my sister's throat. The thought steadied me. I descended the stairs at 6:20, my burgundy gown flowing behind me. Sarah saw me first. Mom, you look incredible. She rushed over, radiant in emerald green. Thomas and Emily joined her. All 3 of my children gathered close. We need to talk, I said quietly. In the study. Now. Their expressions shifted from joy to concern. Is something wrong? Emily asked. Is it Grandma Dorothy? Your grandmother is fine. I led them away from the catering staff. But there's something you need to know before the party begins. Something about your father and Aunt Rebecca. We gathered in Michael's study, the same room where I'd found the hotel receipt. I closed the door. Mom, you're scaring us, Thomas said. I pulled out my phone, showed them the screenshots of Michael's messages, showed them the Polaroid from 2004, watched their faces transform as understanding dawned. No, Sarah whispered. Dad wouldn't. 20 years, I said. At least 20 years. I found letters, dozens of them, hidden in the garden pavilion. Emily covered her mouth, tears already forming. Thomas's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. I'm telling you now because tonight during dinner, I'm going to expose them publicly. I wanted you to hear it from me first. Mom, wait. Sarah reached for my arm. You can't. Not in front of everyone. Think about Grandma, the guests. I've thought about nothing else for 3 weeks. My voice remained steady. They humiliated me for 20 years. Tonight they'll understand how that feels. A knock at the door interrupted us. Mrs. Hartwell? The coordinator's voice. Your sister has arrived. Through the study window, I watched a silver Mercedes pull into the circular drive. Rebecca stepped out wearing midnight blue silk, and around her neck, catching the evening light, hung my grandmother's sapphire necklace. It's time, I said. Dinner began with champagne toasts and laughter. 200 guests celebrating a love story built on quicksand. I sat at the head table between Michael and our children, watching Rebecca across the room. She'd tried approaching me when she arrived, but I'd claimed hosting duties and positioned myself strategically out of reach all evening. The blue dress hugged her figure perfectly. The necklace, my necklace, glittered against her collarbone like a trophy. She caught me staring once and smiled uncertainly, lifting her hand to touch the pendant. A nervous gesture, or perhaps she was remembering what she'd written in that letter. It looks better on me. Speech! Speech! Someone called out as dessert was served. Michael stood, raising his glass. The room quieted. 50 years ago, I married the most beautiful woman in Savannah, he began, his voice warm with practiced charm. Claire has been my rock, my partner, my best friend. She's given me 3 incredible children, stood by me through every challenge, and loved me unconditionally. Unconditionally. The lie settled over the room like fog. To my darling wife, may we have 50 more years together. Glasses clinked. Applause erupted. Michael leaned down to kiss me, and I allowed it, tasting champagne and deceit on his lips. Then I stood. Thank you all for coming tonight, I said, my voice cutting through the celebratory noise. Before we continue, I'd like to share something special, a letter that perfectly captures the truth about love and loyalty. Sarah grabbed my wrist. Mom, please. I gently pulled away and retrieved the folded paper from my clutch. Michael's expression shifted from confusion to dawning horror as he recognized Rebecca's stationery. This was written by my sister Rebecca to my husband Michael, one of many letters I discovered hidden in our garden pavilion. The room went silent. Every eye turned toward Rebecca, who had gone pale as winter frost. I began reading aloud, my voice steady and clear. My dearest Michael, I'm wearing it right now as I write this. Claire's grandmother's necklace, the one with the sapphire pendant. You're right, it does look better on me. She never appreciated beautiful things the way we do. She's so focused on being the perfect wife that she forgot how to be interesting. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I continued, 20 years, and I still get butterflies when your number appears on my phone. Last night at the Greenbrier reminded me why I've never regretted choosing you, even when it means lying to Claire's face at every family gathering. Claire, stop. Michael's voice cracked like breaking glass. I looked at him directly. Why? Isn't this what anniversaries are for? Celebrating our relationship? I'm simply sharing the whole truth about our marriage. The parts I didn't know about until 3 weeks ago. Rebecca stood abruptly, knocking over her wine glass. Red liquid spread across the white tablecloth like blood. It's not... We didn't... She stammered. 20 years, I said, addressing the room. My husband and my sister have been having an affair for 20 years. And tonight, I want you all to know exactly who you've been celebrating. I held up the necklace around Rebecca's throat. That sapphire belonged to my grandmother. She left it to me specifically in her will. Rebecca stole it from my jewelry box during Grandma's funeral. She's been wearing it, for him. My mother, Dorothy, seated nearby, made a small wounded sound. I've also updated my will, I continued. Hartwell Manor, all investments, and every asset I inherited will go entirely to Sarah, Thomas, and Emily. Michael and Rebecca are removed as beneficiaries, effective immediately. The room erupted. Voices overlapped. Shock, outrage, confusion. Sarah was crying. Thomas had his arm around Emily, both of them staring at their father with betrayal written across their faces. Michael reached for me. Claire, let me explain. Explain 20 years of lies? I stepped back. I don't think so. Rebecca pushed through the crowd toward the exit, one hand clutching the necklace, tears streaming down her face. Several guests moved aside. their expressions ranging from pity to disgust. Janet appeared at my elbow, steady and supportive. "Happy anniversary, Michael," I said quietly. "I hope it was worth it." Then I walked out of my own party with my head held high, leaving behind 50 years of beautiful lies and 2 people who'd forgotten that betrayal always demands payment. The truth, I discovered, had a price, but so did silence, and I was done paying for theirs. The legal papers arrived at Michael's new apartment 3 days after the anniversary that destroyed everything. I didn't see his face when he opened the envelope, but Janet told me later that he'd called her, actually begging, for her to convince me to reconsider. She'd hung up on him. Rebecca left Savannah the morning after the dinner. No goodbye, no apology, just a forwarding address in Charleston that she sent to Mother through her lawyer. The necklace arrived by courier 2 weeks later, wrapped in tissue paper with no note. I donated it to the Historical Society in Grandma's name. Let it live in a museum where people could appreciate its beauty, without the stain of betrayal. The divorce proceedings moved swiftly once Richard Pemberton filed the paperwork. Georgia's adultery laws worked beautifully in my favor. Michael signed everything without contest. Perhaps guilt finally caught up to him, or perhaps he simply knew he'd lost. My children struggled at first. Sarah stopped speaking to her father for 6 months. Thomas confronted him in a parking lot, their argument ending with Thomas driving away in tears. Emily, my youngest, took the longest to process it all. But slowly, painfully, we began to heal as a family, a smaller, more honest version of what we'd been. Mother Dorothy never fully understood what had happened that night. Her dementia, a mercy in disguise, allowed her to forget the ugliness and remember only that there had been a beautiful party. She passed away peacefully 8 months later, holding my hand, asking if Michael was working late. "Yes, Mama," I told her. "He's working late. Some lies are kindnesses." I sold the construction company, Michael's supposed legacy, and used the proceeds to establish a foundation for women rebuilding their lives after betrayal. Janet became my co-director. We helped women escape bad marriages, start businesses, find their voices again. Hartwell Manor stayed in the family. Sarah and her husband moved in with their children, filling the old house with laughter that felt genuine for the first time in decades. I took the guest cottage, the same one where I'd found those letters, and transformed it into my sanctuary. I traveled. Paris in spring, Iceland in summer, New Zealand in autumn. Places Michael had always promised we'd visit someday. I visited them alone, and discovered I preferred my own company to his empty promises. A year after that anniversary dinner, we held another gathering at Hartwell Manor. Just family this time. Sarah, Thomas, Emily, their spouses, my 7 grandchildren, and Janet. No champagne towers, no white roses, no speeches about lasting love, just laughter around a dinner table. My grandson asking for seconds, my granddaughter showing me her latest drawing. Real moments with people who loved me without conditions or secrets. "You look happy, Mom," Emily said softly, squeezing my hand. "I am," I realized, surprised by the truth of it. I finally am. That night, standing in the garden pavilion under a sky full of stars, I thought about the woman I'd been a year ago, so desperate for proof, so broken by betrayal, so ready to burn everything down. I didn't regret the fire. Some things need to burn before you can rebuild. Michael sent a card on what would have been our 51st anniversary. I didn't open it. Janet threw it in the fireplace, and we watched it curl into ash over wine and chocolate. Rebecca never reached out. I heard through distant cousins that she'd moved to Charleston, working at an art gallery, living quietly. I felt nothing when I heard her name. Not anger, not sadness, just the neutral indifference reserved for strangers. They'd stolen 20 years of my life, but I'd reclaimed myself, and that, I discovered, was the sweetest victory of all. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for watching until the end. Every like and subscription helps us share more powerful stories. See you soon with another unforgettable tale.